Research, which has so graciously granted me the funds to put this event on. I would also like to acknowledge Elaine Burkholder, Carlos Carrillo, Heather Henry, Catherine Shy, Stephanie McLean, all for helping me publicize this event. I would also like to thank Mr. Michael J. Lavery for helping me in becoming the person I am today. Now, I've already mentioned him, but before I introduce him, I would like to give a brief testimony on how whole brain power has benefited me. I met Mr. Lavery in 2012 on the cliffsides of Laguna Beach. At the time, I was coming off academic probation. I was feeling very lost, having realized that I wasted 2 years at State San Bernardino. The reality of my loans was beginning to set in. I wanted to do better in school, had no idea where to begin. All these factors contributed to that meeting, that fateful meeting on the cliffsides of Laguna Beach with Mr. Lavery, where he began by exhibiting his skills on the hammer, showing off his mirror image Da Vinci writing, sharing his tremendous amount of memory, and also explaining the neurological processes that make this program so beneficial. Once I got his book, I diligently began to train myself. And for the summer of 2012, I did little else. When I came back to attending class in the fall, I scored a 3.8 quarterly GPA, which was the highest I'd ever achieved in college. The following quarter, I got a 4.0 and made the dean's list. Now, these weren't my lower division classes that I had been lagging on. These were now my upper division classes, and it was essential that I did good. In the practical sense, the question comes out, what exactly changed? These exercises increased my attention span so that when it came to sitting in my lecture hall, I was able to stay attentive for those 2 hours without a lapse, recalling, for the most part, a majority of the information that I heard. Also, my level of awareness was elevated. I was able to articulate myself better through speech and writing. And also, there was a change in my demeanor going on. I was more confident. I was more motivated. I was productive, energized. What's more is that these things were noticeable. My parents recognized the change in me. My friends recognized the change in me. It was such a dramatic change that even my brother was inspired to take on this program. And he has pushed the limit athletically. He's put on 12 pounds of pure muscle in 1 year from this program. He's beefier than me and 3 years younger. So, without any further ado, I would like to introduce the innovator and designer of whole brain power, the man who has dedicated 25 years, over 25 years of his life to the application and study of ambidextrous exercises. Mr. Michael J. Lavery. Thank you.
I'm really grateful for your testimony tonight. This is a very wonderful young man, and he's inspired me to take my program to the next level. And I must also give kudos to his brother, Andres, who's been a very impressive student. I have quite a few students doing my whole brain power program in all walks of life. I'm currently 55 years of age, and my life is getting better. My brain is getting better. Most people are experiencing the opposite. I started whole brain power over 30 years ago. I wasn't even aware that I was doing my program until the breakthroughs started coming out on how the brain actually is the final frontier and how we've basically collected more information about how the brain works in the last couple decades than we had previously in the last 5,000 years. So the reason I got into whole brain power is because I wanted to become a better athlete. I was playing professional baseball in 1982. I graduated from Amherst College in that year, and I signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. And I was a little bit disillusioned about professional baseball and the lifestyle. I just need to see that movie Bull Durham and look at what happens to professional athletes that are in the minor leagues, traveling in buses, hotel to hotel, and playing in dilapidated stadiums where the guy's throwing a 92-mile-an-hour slider and you can't even see the thing. So I decided professional baseball wasn't my gig, and I decided to get into tennis instead. I had played tennis as a young man, but my father was a baseball coach, football coach, so it was baseball, football, and hockey for me, and then tennis occasionally. When I decided to apply myself at tennis, I came up with this very novel concept. Why couldn't I play ambidextrously? My backhand was far inferior to my forehands, so a good player would take advantage of my weaker side being my backhand. And I was frustrated at not winning tournaments because I've always been a very competitive person. One day the light bulb went off and I elected to start hitting left-hand forehands. It starts out with a Michael Lavery story in my Whole Brain Power book. And I was playing a gentleman named John Rushing, who was a very good friend of mine, who was the best man at my wedding, and he was beating me rather easily until the light bulb about ambidexterity started to glow in my mind. And that happened in 1988, and since that day, 1988, September of that year, on approximately September the 4th of 1988, I've made a concerted effort to use both sides of my body and both sides of my brain to a level that will impress you in terms of my dexterity. So I have some unusual feats that I've accomplished. I now can literally walk a very quick mile bouncing a golf ball off the head of a hammer without dropping one time. So that's why they call me the Hammer Man. What happened in my journey to become highly ambidextrous is I was very fortunate to have literature coming out that proves the human brain makes new neurons. The human brain grows the myelin. The myelin sheath, you hear that word a lot these days, the myelin sheath. We hear about neuroplasticity. We hear about the problems of ADD and ADHD, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's disease, depression, you name it. The brain is becoming a very hot topic these days. I'm very fortunate that I came along in my life when the information was on the Fibonacci sequence. I do the recitation of the states and the capitals. And the reason I started doing this is so I can have a better left-hand forehand in tennis. I started to learn how to write left-handed mirror image. Leonardo da Vinci was the world's foremost mirror writer. And people today claim that the reason he was mirror writing had to do with hiding his secrets from the church. I have done 10,000 pages of mirror writing. I know it sounds as though I might have too much time in my hands, but when at the age of 55 I can drive a golf ball 375 yards on a golf course and hit it straight, people start going, how much time do you do on mirror writing a day? What happened in my tennis games, I went from a B player to a professional caliber player against all odds. I played against some of the top guys in the world in senior division. Scott Davis was once #1 doubles player in the world. He was ranked as high as number 11 in the world, and I played against Scott Davis. And during the changeover, he says, "I can't believe you're doing this." What I do every single day in my life is I work on my fine motor control of doing left-handed, you can pass that book around, left-handed mirror writing, right-handed forward writing, right-handed upside-down writing, all for the quest of making my brain more plastic. How many people in this room can do the alphabet backwards? Well, the best way to do the alphabet backwards is to look in both directions and don't trip and go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Or you can turn around and do an ABC, or you can think about doing it so that Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T. My student can do it. Can you do it in unison with me? Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. So people go, why would I do that? Well, that will make your hippocampi structure start to have activity in the area called Eamon's Horn. Has anybody heard of the subiculum? Has anybody heard of the area called Cornus Ammonius 1 and Cornus Ammonius 3? Can you imagine if we actually started to think about going into our brain as though we're a mechanic and start to think about how to rejuvenate it? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could actually go in and start to make our brain better so we don't go in the bedroom going, why am I in the bedroom? I knew I came in here for something. I better go back to the kitchen to figure out why am I in the kitchen. I know I got a problem. I better start exercising mine. So we look for the pill. We're looking for pharmaceutical intervention to help our brain. But the secret is really in just our willpower. Tell our brain to actually start working. This is how I train students. Put your hands in front of you as I'm demonstrating, ladies and gentlemen. Put your hands in front of you just as I'm demonstrating. So this is your brain. Your brain sort of resembles your two fists side by side. Look down through your transparent skull and tell your brain there's a new sheriff in town and that things are changing around these parts and that you're not happy with your brain's performance. Because most people are having problems with memory. This gentleman here, Nick, will attest that I just put him through a brain gauntlet run.
You did about an hour or so of it. My mind feels like mush.
So I tested this young gentleman here on a simple math test and he didn't pass it. I tested this gentleman here on a simple test and he didn't pass it. On page 122 of my book, there's a test called the buzz game. It's a simple test and people don't pass it. So if people don't pass a simple test, what's going to happen to us if we have a more complicated test? So what happens to us is our brain wags us. We should wag the brain. When our brain stops remembering things, what people's names happen to be, or information, we blank out on a test. One of the reasons we're blanking on a test is because our anxiety levels are out of control, because our amygdala and our hippocampi structures aren't working in concert with each other. So if we had an unbelievable memory, then we would probably have unbelievable handwriting. There's an old saying that if you want to remember something, that you write it down. You don't print it down, you don't type it down, you don't text it down, you physically write it down. How many people in this room do beautiful cursive handwriting every day? So most people today in college are printing. Do you print, sir? What do you do? Chicken scratching? So most people today have really poor handwriting. A man named Austin Palmer in the early 1900s wrote a book, and millions of people practiced this technique. It was called the Palmer technique. If you look at most people's handwriting today, we do not have the technique for Palmer method. So what I started doing in my process is writing my Palmer method. So I'm writing my name. And the goal is to have the beautiful slope. So it's easy for me to write on a piece of paper than on a board. So as a consequence, as I started to write with my right hand smoothly, I started also to write with my left hand smoothly. This is my signature mirror image. Does it look like I'm having a hard time with my left hand writing? So what I do sometimes, I go in the bank and I sign my first name with my right hand and my second name with my... So it looks like the same hand did the writing, doesn't it? Our brains are incredibly plastic. If we would only investigate it, I don't know why this thing here isn't erasing properly, but we'll figure it out. If we would only investigate the brain just as though we investigate how many continents are on the planet or how many states are in America, what the capital of Florida is. If we had the same curiosity about Purkinje fibers and the cerebellum and how norepinephrine is produced and dopamine. Tomorrow I have a meeting with a gentleman at his home at 9 o'clock. He's been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So the system says, you got Parkinson's, take a pill, go in for deep stem cell stimulation, but I'm telling him, get a hammer and start bouncing a ball. So tonight, we're going to show folks how to do something so basic as bounce a ball on a hammer. My top students can run a full-speed 100-yard dash, bouncing the ball on the hammer. This is how I train people. We bounce the ball and we catch it. The eye has to track the ball. I have people coming back to me and reporting they don't need reading glasses at night because they enhance the eye muscles. Our eye muscles in modern America are getting really weak. We don't track an animal in the forest anymore. We just track the number to Domino's Pizza. So what's happening to our brain power and our eyesight and our hearing skills and our memory skills is that they're all waning because it all goes back to the brain. So our brain produces signals that makes our endocrine system work. Does anybody know what the endocrine system does? The endocrine system is actually regulating hormone production. So if one would do a Google search today, we have low hormones across the board. And one of the reasons we have low hormones across the board is because our brains aren't working to peak efficiency. So when I ask somebody to play this game called the Buzz game, does anybody remember what page it's on?
176.
It's on page 122. So one of the tests I give people when I'm explaining my whole brain power book is I'll tell them the name of my book 5 times, and they still can't remember the name of the book. And it's kind of blowing my mind. I'm going, my book called Whole Brain Power is really suggested reading. The Whole Brain Power book helps people. And then when they walk away, they go, the power of the brain is really going to be a good book to read. Even my brother calls me up and says, Mike, I can't find your book on the internet. So most of my family members are starting to have what they call mild cognitive impairment. Has anybody heard that term before? So what happens, you have a mild fever, and if you don't rest and take care of yourself and get hydrated, it can turn into a full-blown fever and maybe take you out, maybe turn into pneumonia. So what happens to our brains is we get what they call mild cognitive impairment. There's another term for it, it's called CRS. Anybody know what that stands for? So what's happening to us is we're all being indoctrinated into believing that we can't make our brains actually rejuvenate themselves. But I believe in the opposite. I'm diametrically opposed to what the system says. When my friends and my competitors in tennis told me that it would be the day that I could serve a left-handed tennis ball against them, I went home and started writing left-handed mirror image. And to this day, I've done over 10,000 pages of it. And I would serve left-handed aces against my opponent. And he would ask me during the changeover, are you right-handed or left-handed? I said, my doctor told me not to talk about it because I got stuck in the birth canal too long, and that's what caused me to have a problem. So, as a consequence, what I teach people to do is to experiment with their brain, to start to brush their teeth with left hand, shave left-handed, write a letter left-handed, mirror right, memorize the alphabet as A is 1 and D is 2 and C is 3. What's the 18th letter of the alphabet, sir?
And the 7th letter of the alphabet.
The 7th letter is G. And the 18th letter of the alphabet is R. So just imagine that you could spell any word using numbers. The word dad would be 4, 1, 4. Mom would be 13, 15, 13. Experimental would be 5, 24, 16, 5, 18, 9, 13, 5, 14, 21, 12. So what happens in a brain that is doing these exercises, one is actually moving faster through the myelinated white matter tract systems. There's a book called The Talent Code. Has anybody read that book? The Talent Code is by a gentleman named Daniel Coyle that went around the world and found unusual pockets of talent. And he found out that these people were training their students in a very similar technique. Perfect execution of a technique, meaning perfect form under pressure. So people today don't practice perfect penmanship anymore. We don't use our vocabulary. So when I'm asking a gentleman to speak with 5-syllable vocabulary words, at first it's very difficult. Just imagine that you had to output 5-syllable vocabulary words at every opportunity. I'll take this opportunity to use my educational prowess so that there's a greater appreciation for this information during the dissemination. And I'll make these recommendations so that your curiosity gets the best of you, so that you would practice, and so that you would have some type of ramifications. We don't use really descriptive language anymore. Wouldn't you agree, ladies and gentlemen? One of the tests I gave this gentleman tonight happened to be able to speak with complete sentences, and the first thing he said is, okay. I asked the man the other day, would you stop saying okay? He said, okay. If we had a like meter going off at this campus, it would be excessive. So are you like an artist like? We're using our language in the most truncated manner possible. There's a book called Aging with Grace. The oldest people in the United States of America, and you can do this research, go do a Google search, happen to be the nuns, and they say because they didn't get married. Maybe. They're not usually going around playing video games. They're not usually writing really poor chicken scratch methodology with their penmanship. Most of them have phenomenal vocabulary. There's a gentleman named Professor David Snowden. He gets the brains from the nuns. So almost 700 nuns have passed away now. And these nuns are donating their brains. And when they're looking at the brain tissue with an electron microscope, their brain tissue is blowing everybody else's brain tissue out of the water. So Makesbury is the gentleman that has the electron microscope 110,000 times the naked eye. He's looking at the lack of neurofibrillary tangles in this brain tissue, and says that the woman that's 104 years of age has a brain that's no older than 50. Does anybody know what a tau tangle is? Does anybody know what a neurofibrillary tangle is? Has anybody heard of the word amyloid protein precursor? The amyloid plaques? What happens to our brains is they become highly inflamed. The reason they're inflamed is because the sugar isn't getting cleared properly. So when you're eating and then you go watch a lot of TV, from my perspective, a lot of things start to change. You get tired. Has anybody ever fallen asleep in front of a television set? Have you ever asked yourself why you fall asleep in front of a television set? I believe the reason you fall asleep in front of the television set is because the brain produces its own opiates. It produces its own morphine. The brain produces a chemical 48 more times more powerful than morphine. It's called beta endorphins. Beta endorphins are there to save us from going into shock. When a person breaks a limb, usually the brain produces a tremendous amount of beta endorphins to put the person in a state where they can't feel the pain, because if they did feel the pain, they'd probably have a heart attack. And then when the beta endorphins wear off, then that arm or leg starts throbbing, and then they get on Demerol or morphine, or some other type of Oxycontin, some other type of pain reliever. So what our brain does is it produces chemicals that actually lock down memory. So what happens to us as we age, we don't get better at sports, or music, or singing, or memory, because our brain is atrophying. And the area of the brain that's atrophying the quickest happens to be the hippocampus. There's two of them called hippocampi. And the head of the hippocampi starts to atrophy. The head of the hippocampus is now a known center of neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the formation of cells from stem cells that the brain produces. We now know that the brain's producing a lot of stem cells, but it's not going to happen by osmosis. It's going to happen by action. So what happens to us as we age, our curiosity goes down, and our motivation usually is stabilized, and our scientific discovery is on the Discovery Channel. But most of us aren't going to the library and reading obscure white papers on neuroplasticity and a term called steroidogenesis. Steroidogenesis is a real term. You can go on the internet and read papers that prove that the human body has the capacity to produce its own steroids. Otherwise, we wouldn't be alive. If our body wasn't producing testosterone and estrogen and estradiol and the human growth hormones and DHEA, then we wouldn't be alive. So what we're doing today is looking for the pharmaceutical solution. Androfen, bioidenticals, get this chemical, this breakthrough testosterone precursor. It has some side effects, but don't worry about it, guys. We'll figure that one out. What I did in my personal journey is I worked on my hand-to-eye coordination with hammers. My world record of bouncing a golf ball off a hammer without missing it on a hammer much smaller than this is 7,148 times. When I broke that record, what I did was I bounced it initially with my right hand, went over to my left hand, went back over to my right hand like this. And now I'm able to bounce it on the round side. My world record on the round side of this hammer is 394 times. My hand-eye coordination went through the roof and my forearm density went off the charts. Sir, I want you to check out this forearm density here. Sir, check out this forearm density here. Right here. So when we get older, what happens to our body mass index? Muscle tissue drops, and then the other stuff usually goes up. What's the other stuff called? What's the technical name for it? Adipose tissue. And how does that collect on the body? From my research, what happens is the brain doesn't clear the sugar the way it's supposed to. Because if the brain's shrinking, it's metaphorically going from a 454 under the hood to a 289 under the hood, so you're not going to be efficient with the expenditure of the calories. Actually, you are efficient. You want the brain to be inefficient with the expenditure of calories. You want to get it removed from the solution so it doesn't have to go back to the liver to be made into a triglyceride. What happens to us is we are more and more drawn to watching a screen, whether it's your iPad or your text messaging. Our brains are getting lazier. How many people have had a problem lately where they lose the charge of their phone and they can't call home? They can't even call their own landline. They can't call their mom because they don't have those memorized anymore. The Greeks 2,500 years ago had 25,000 lines of poetry. That was normal. 25,000. They were so strong they were able to hold 75-pound shields. I was holding this bag here, and these two guys were holding the bag, and it was later I got to get this bag. And I said, come on, grab that bag. Because this thing was full with metal balls and hammers. We have people that are now proving that the human brain physically grows. Have you ever heard of the juggling study where the brain grew with these people by 5% in only 90 days? Can you imagine if the economy grew 5% in 90 days? That would be amazing. Everybody would have a smile on their face. Our brains can grow if we train it. We have a gentleman here, Andres, who can juggle 5 pounds. This ball here is about 2.5 pounds. Andres can juggle 5-pound metal spheres while he's reciting the entirety of the periodic elements. And that's one of the reasons he put on, it's actually 15 pounds. It's 15 pounds now. Because he's put on 3 pounds in the last 30 days of pure muscle mass with a very low body fat ratio. So as a consequence of training the hands, the brain grows. It's called the Homunculus Theory. Has anybody heard of that term before? Homunculus. Homunculus Theory is taught that we have a sensory homunculus and a motor homunculus, and the motor homunculus grows the motor strip of the brain. The hands take more real estate on the brain than the rest of our senses combined. Think about it now. What are we doing? We go home, we activate our occipital lobes and our auditory cortex by TV, by movies, Netflix downloads. We're not activating the hands. The hands physically make the brain grow. So by doing this exercise, by reciting the alphabet backwards, Z, Y, X, W, V, U, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, N, L, K, J, I, H, G, F, E, C, B, A, I activated a lot of my brain. Now my right hemisphere is going to get activated by going Z, Y, X, W, V, E, T, S, R, Q, P, O, N, M, L, K, J, F, C, B, A. So reflexes go down as we age. If I say to somebody, sir, give me 5. Good. So if I start moving my hands really quickly, a lot of people can't give me the 5. So the older we get, the slower the hands move and the foot moves too, because when we get to a certain point, then the DMV says, sir, miss, we have to have you come in here and take a new test because you just ran over a sign, ran over the mailbox, you drove your car right through the garage door. So we need to test you. So people get concerned about their parents driving because their motor skills are going down. Our motor skills are connected to the wiring. That's called the Axon Chief. This is what occurs. When you have a neuron, this is a very simplistic shape of a neuron. This is the soma of the body. And this is the arm that comes off, and then you have the dendritic spines. It's connected to another neuron. So what you have is a coating. This is called the myelin. What happens to the myelin is it thins. It's supposed to be nice and thick. That's the myelin sheath here. It has a gap in between it. That's called the node of Ranvier. What happens is, when our myelin is nice and thick and well maintained, because those cells are called oligodendrocytes. When those cells are actually doing a job in myelinating, one cell called an oligodendrocyte can myelinate 50 axon sheaths of 50 different neurons. That's incredible. And it's called Philippedia. These arms on these cells that are in my whole brain power book. I do illustrations in this book here. You can see in the blueprint for the brain, you can still see these cells called oligodendrocytes. And these oligodendrocytes essentially have arms on them. And these arms are having a responsibility of myelinating these axon sheaths. If we do not exercise our hands properly, and our legs properly, and our body will not tell the brain to myelinate itself. That's an amazing discovery, and this is not my theory, guys. This is scientifically backed. We now know that the songbird in the spring, just so they can propagate its races, grows its testosterone levels 25% by making a new song. The bird's up in the tree going, and last year's chickie goes, I heard that song last year. So he's like, for a week he's up there. And she's going, no, that's a better tune, it's sort of like a Mozart. So he finally gets that female, and during that time, his chest grows, and his brain grows, and they take the bird, and they basically put that bird to sleep, and they extract the bird's brain for medical purposes to prove to the human race that our brains make testosterone and estrogen. But we think that the only source of testosterone and estrogen comes from our sex glands, but that's not the case. In my own personal journey, I met a man that was a tennis player in college, and he's now a neurosurgeon, and he said to my sister-in-law, who's a physician's assistant, that you cannot change the brain and make it ambidextrous. And when I played tennis against the gentleman, I obliterated him. Because when he said that I couldn't do what I was doing, I made it a habit to say, I'm going to show this doctor a few things. And what I did was, I was really mean to him. I went like this to hit all the head smash, and I went like that. Oh, sorry. And I dropped him. So when the ball came over here and hit the backhand, I went like this right here, and then the next time I went like this, and I hit the ball on the line. So he was going over here because he thought the racket was coming out. So after the match, he came over and shook my hand. He goes, I'm going to throw my textbook in the fireplace tonight. That was back in 2001. Since 2001, we now have made tremendous strides in understanding what the brain can do. There's a chemical that our muscles produce called IGF-1. Do you know what IGF-1 is, sir?
It's a microvector.
That's correct. So when we do these drills called whole brain power, what we're doing is producing a chemical through the contraction of the muscle and exercising the hippocampal structure simultaneously Imagine staying with this ball and going 2, and then double 2 with me, guys. So 2, 4, double that. You have 8, and then you have 16. You have 32, 64, 128. Then you have 256. That's the binary system. My top student here tonight can do 2 to the 60th power. So can we recite at the same time, sir? That's 1 quintillion, 152 quadrillion, 900. 504 billion, 606 million, 846,976. Thank you so much. This gentleman here, I'm so proud of him. I basically set a bar for him and he jumped over it. And I went, this is amazing. And I put the bar even higher. And I asked him to recite the periodic elements. And now he's doing the entirety of the tables. And then I said, well, while you're at it, why don't you just memorize the capitals in the countries of the world? And he's now done that. Have you not, sir?
That is correct.
And so what's happening, he's at an academy out in Arizona, and his tutors are going, what is going on with this kid? All his friends are going, how do you do that? They're bouncing off him on the soccer field. So this gentleman here now has an opportunity to take his soccer career to the professional levels. He actually was working with some professional teams over in Europe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so he was one of the youngest people in the United States selected for that opportunity. And he's just in the beginning. He's only 19 years of age. Do you think you're ever going to have a problem with your memory, sir?
I don't think I will.
I doubt he'll ever have problems with memory, because now that he knows how well these memory training methodologies are functioning for his overall mood elevation, he was having some problems with acne. And I'm straight shooter. I said, son, if your acne problems are bothering you, would you mind if I give you some recommendations? He said, sure. And I told him to do even more memory exercises and to start drinking some apple cider vinegar, and now his problem's clearing up, and his confidence is going up. And now the chicks are going, wow, that's a nice looking guy with a nice looking ripped body. So there's a lot of benefits to doing this program. So just imagine that we would all start to do exercises and tell our brains that tonight you're going to do the alphabet backwards. I can teach you how to do the alphabet backwards really quickly. Just take each letter and assign an image to it. So Z is the zebra. So I'll tell you a story. It's a funny story. The zebra was jumping on a yellow xylophone, ZYX. And he was at Charlie Sheen's house. And Charlie flashed him the W. So Charlie thought he was a winner. So the zebra on the yellow xylophone is a winner. And the German girl with the fake boobs pops out of the jacuzzi. She said, "What did you do, Charlie?" What is the German girl? So now we have a picture in our mind. That means our right brain and our left brain are working in concert with each other to have memory. This is how most people's brains work metaphorically. The left brain tells the right brain, shut up.
Okay, now shut up. Because I'm a logical, analytical type of guy. And I love my sports on TV. So shut up. I want to do a watercolor tonight. I want to play guitar, sing, take ballroom dancing. Oh, shut up. Shut up over there.
So now the brain is left to its own devices because the right side of the brain, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, is atrophying faster than the left side of the brain. And that's been proven. They have what they call the PET scan. Has anybody heard of a PET scan? PET scan is called positron emission tomography. Positron emission tomography can show the uptake of a radioactive isotope, which is attached to a glucose molecule. They're now looking at the brain and realizing the brain is not uptaking sugar properly. The reason the brain is not uptaking sugar properly is because one of the cells in the brain is malfunctioning. One of the cells is called an astrocyte. What the astrocyte does is one of the 5 glial cells that are known in the brain. What the astrocyte does is it is supposed to hold on to the capillary system and pull glucose out of the system and pull it into its body and metabolize it and synthesize it as another form of sugar called lactate. So lactate is then spoon-fed to the neuron. The neuron itself doesn't have an opportunity to feed itself. The neuron's the king, And the astrocyte is a helper cell. These are called glial cells. 15, 20 years ago, we thought the astrocyte was glue for the brain. It's way more than that, ladies and gentlemen. It regulates calcium and the extracellular matrix. Our brain has 400 miles of blood vessels in it. 400 miles, I want you to think about that. The brain is a 3-pound coconut with the consistency of cottage cheese, but it's got 400 miles of blood vessels in it. Plus, it has enough myelin axon sheets that it's coated to wrap around the world multiple times. Does anybody know what the corpus callosum is? The corpus callosum is the cable that connects the two hemispheres of the brain. And most brains, it's not a two-way street. Most brains, it's left brain dominant, get to the point, truncated laconicism. Does anybody know what laconicism means? Laconicism means truncated language. So would you say that the majority of our spoken English is complete sentences? The majority of our spoken language is uh-huh. Uh-huh. A guy's on the phone. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, okay. No. No way. Really? Uh-huh. Okay. See you. That's our language. What's the other guy saying? So since we don't do cursive handwriting anymore with a beautiful calligraphy pen or blank paper and write letters to people now, our brains aren't functioning and our dopamine levels are dropping. Without dopamine, you can't focus. Without dopamine, you can't keep your body still. That's called Parkinson's disease. So most people, as they age, start having problems, tremors of the hands. I think that there are all kinds of exercises that we can do to actually make our hands very steady. One of the drills I'm going to have you folks do tonight is take this hammer and see if you can keep it on there for 10 seconds. It's not easy to do. For anybody to do it on this hammer, to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll give you $20 cash out of my pocket. And if you don't do it, you don't owe me money. And I'm gonna predict there's not gonna be one person, except for my 2 students, that can do it. And I've tested thousands of athletes. I've even tested professional athletes to actually take this ball and go 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000. And the reason they can't do it is because they have never practiced it before. So when you go and ask somebody for their handwriting sample, the first sentence might look good, but if they have to write a full page of it, by the time they get down to the end, their brain is exhausted because they don't have the uptake properly working. So the neuron has to be similar to a muscle that goes, I'm fired, I'm firing again, I'm firing again, I'm firing again. Are you aware that neurons can upload and fire 100 times per second? If you take a pen, you take a pin and you put a small dot on there, that equates to about 20,000 neurons. I want you to think about this one. We've got 100 billion neurons on average in our brain. 100 billion. And each one of those neurons has a capacity to have between 1,000 and 20,000 connections. That means our brain is infinite. Here's a question I'm going to ask you guys to really ponder. 2 things that you're going to have to give me. Each person in this room must live for 1,000 years, and you don't look more than 30 the whole time. So after we set everybody here, if you're not 30 and you're older than 30, we're going to get you back to 30. And if you're younger than 30, then you get to go up to 30 and you're getting older. And then you can't die. So you're imprisoned in the human vessel for 1,000 years. My recommendation, go watch the movie with Bill Murray called Groundhog Day. That's such a great movie because Bill has to live his life over and over in some town because he's a reporter for the weather and he has to drive up there for the Groundhog Day. The groundhog didn't show himself. So he goes back to his hotel, get ready, and there's a storm coming in, so they can't leave, and he wakes up the next day. It's the same day, same music, same people. He's in Twilight Zone. I thought we just did this thing. So he goes out and does it again. So he lives his life, and what happens is he wants to kill himself because he can't handle the boredom and the mundane. So now I want you to think about it. If you lived for 1,000 years and you had all the hobbies you have today, that's all the hobbies you'll ever do for 1,000 years, how many people would want to jump off the bridge? Imagine that. 550 Super Bowls. Get ready for Super Bowl for 6 weeks. Super Bowl, honey. Super Bowl 550. Wow. American Idol. Oh, God. Jeopardy. 550 years of watching Jeopardy. Oh, God. CNN, constant negative news work. I mean, seriously. Wouldn't you want to learn how to build a piece of furniture? Maybe a guitar? Take piano lessons, ballroom dancing? 1,000 years? So what happens to us is we live, and the Bible says, oh, 70, if you live 70, you have a great life. Well, most of us now are going past 70 because of all this intervention. For stents in the heart, open heart surgery, all these type of new breakthroughs with drugs and insulin pills and all these pumps and everything. So now what's happening, we're going past that 70, it's 80, but what's happening, we're losing our marbles. This is my imitation of Sylvester Stallone. Seriously, Agent, I'm losing some marbles now. I gotta get out of boxing. I know it. I can't remember where I parked my car. Not only that, I can't remember which car I took out. I have 10 cars in the garage. Now I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? I think I'm gonna get into lawn bowling. Start bouncing balls off the handles. This is my imitation of Milkman. I cannot remember having a relationship with that woman. Now I can't remember, then you shouldn't be able to actually hold me accountable. So what's happening to us and our society is long conversations are so rare. Can you imagine having a long conversation with somebody now where you actually use complete sentences? I created a game with whole brain power. That is to speak complete sentences. You understand, young lady? Very well. Let's continue. So just imagine that we would start to use our full plethora of vocabulary. If I played the whole room at the same time, I can say, let's go to the letter R. And you can't play it, neither can you. So words that begin with R that have 5 syllables. My word is ridiculously. Go ahead.
Homunculus.
Pardon me?
That's my fourth.
So you're out of the game. Come on. How about ramifications, remuneration?
Ridiculously.
I already said that. So this scheme here that we work on is, if you use my word, you're out of the game. So then I eliminate everybody. So then we go to the letter N. My word is notoriety, notification, non-determinate. Neurological is very good. So my word is nefariously. Let's go to P. Precipitation. Perpendicular. Pandemonium. So just imagine that we were rewarded every day by life. By using great vocabulary, we would know why we were in the garage. We would remember somebody's name. We would start to be able to attend a lecture and write with cursive handwriting, and 2 hours would pass and you'd say, this is unbelievable. I retained it all. Plus I wrote it down in unbelievable cursive handwriting, and now I'm getting dean's lists. That's amazing. This guy here is a phenom, and I'm stroking his ego, but that's how I do it. If he's doing well, I'm going to applaud his efforts, and I'm going to say, son, you can even do better. And what happens now is this gentleman here, he's so motivated, he has friends that are posting on YouTube. There's a gentleman that you can take a look at. His name is Cerebral Prince. He won the Harlem Globetrotters Best Basketball Handling Skills. And he started with me 5 years ago. Out of the blue, a gentleman calls me up and I tell him to start doing all these exercises, and the kid is a phenom now. He goes down to the basketball court with 2 basketballs at the same time and can sink 3-pointers simultaneously. He can do 2 rubber mallows at the same time. This kid's 19 years of age and he's a super genius. If you go on the internet, you can see him before he had the transformation. He just looked like a normal kid in suburbia playing video games. What happens to us is we get sucked into video games. I can definitely tell that you played a video game in your day. Almost every young kid today is being sucked into video game land. Were you a video game player for a while there, Diego?
Temporarily, I had my day.
So this gentleman, when he first met me, was a little bit confused, but now he's no longer confused. He's actually highly motivated. And this young lady here came up to us when we were outside, and she referred to Diego as the resident on-campus genius. But everybody here has genius potential. I know one thing's for sure, that if you did have to live for 1,000 years, and you really were interested in harvesting the potential of your brain, you'd probably learn 10 languages, you'd probably be all playing piano, you'd probably be so knowledgeable about world events and about vocabulary, and you'd probably be classified as a genius. Has anybody ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
Yeah.
Where the sergeant gets frozen in time, and then they shut off the program, and he wakes up in the future, and he's the smartest guy in the planet. Dude, bro, electrolytes, dude. It's like, dude, the electrolytes are in the water, bro. It's like, dude, you're the smartest guy in the world, bro. The White House wants to see you, right? Like now, buddy. Like now, man. And that's exactly what's going to happen to us as a society if we don't change our ways. I mean, think about it. It's OMG, and you know, are you aware where the word wow came from? Wow comes from wonder of wonders. Okay is the most common used word on the planet today. When we speak to each other, we use that word L-I-K-E so excessively, we put it where it doesn't belong. Like, what do you mean? It doesn't belong there. What happens to our brains, according to a gentleman named Dr. Alan Waxman, who is the chairman of the board of the nuclear medicine department at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. He runs the PET scan machine. You can see him on YouTube. The brain is atrophying faster than it's supposed to. There was a recent article on Google that says that Alzheimer's has risen 70% since the year 2000. Now, can you imagine that each one of you guys had a guardian angel? So just think that he looks similar to me. So I'm this guardian angel, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you speak complete sentences at all times. You understand me, sir?
Yes, I do.
So each time that you fail to do so, you're going to pay me $1 or your cash. You understand my request?
I understand your request.
So when you do well, I'm going to reward you. It's not only going to be a debit, it's going to be a credit debit. So I'm going to be watching and listening. So each time that you speak properly, you get your reward, and each time you fail to do so, I'm going to fine you. At first, I'm going to fine you more than you're going to get rewarded. Because you're going to start talking to somebody and you go, I'm going to say it's a double fine. This gentleman here went through a gauntlet run. His head's still spinning, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm still feeling it.
So anybody here want to volunteer for a memory test? I'm going to pick on you, sir. Well, what's your age?
45.
So I'm the guardian. So you have to say, I'm the guardian angel, so you have to say I'm currently 45. So then when you put the "ya" in there, I'm going to find you. This is a really difficult test to play. What happens when you practice this methodology? Your brain has to go into super alert mode. What happens to us is we get super alert mode because we have to take a test, focus, and then the rest of the time we just go. And we're not paying attention on the road, and then don't. Someone's not paying attention, two people aren't paying attention at the same time, and that's a death. That's a person walking across the sidewalk. And someone's driving up on the sidewalk. A person's walking on the crosswalk. It happened recently living on the beach. An artist, a young lady, got killed. So sad. So what happens to us is we go around most of the day with no alertness. Believe it or not, guys, I wanted to be a really good tennis player. After I became a really good tennis player, I wanted to become a really good golfer. My story is documented. At the age of 43, I had never broken 110 in my life. On 30 rounds of golf, I shot a 65. My best student, his name is Robert Twine. Robert Twine shot a 57. He shot the lowest round of golf in California in recent history. He shot 13 under par on par 70. And he lipped out 2 putts. His last putt hit the center of the cup, was on the edge. You can read about this in the South Atlantic Golf magazine. This is a true story. One day, I told somebody that with my brain power techniques, I'm going to break par. They go, it's not going to happen. So what I did was I got on a David Letterman show, bouncing a golf ball off a hammer, and on ESPN Sports Center, top 10 plays of the day, and the general manager is in his office going like this. Come in here. Show me how to do that. Show me how to do that. I want to do this badly. I can't. So he invites me to play golf with him, and I was driving the golf ball 370 yards past his pros, and he went, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just starting to get warmed up." "What do you score on my golf course?" I said, "I've never played your golf course regularly. It's so expensive." He goes, you're gonna play every single day if you want to." I said, what's the catch?" "Nothing, just show me that you can get good." Within 6 months, I shot a 65. So what I did was I put on my thinking cap and I took a lesson from the guy whose father taught Tiger Woods for 10 years. His name is Dan Anselmo. My memory is so good that when Dan showed me something, I blew it away. Now I'm going to show you something I do with a golf club. What we do is we take this ball like this, and we stop it, and we spin it. And we spin it, and we actually go like this, and we go Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut. So what happens is when I'm playing golf around the golf course, for some reason, I can focus better than the other guy. How many people in this room love to play sports? Ping pong, pool, tennis, guitar, piano. I can guarantee you, every one of those endeavors will get better if you start doing handwriting. If you start to do handwriting and memorization drills. And these exercises on the hammer. See this hammer here? My world record of bouncing a golf ball off this hammer here, consecutively, is, believe it or not, 1,520 times. So when this hammer here is being mastered, what do you think I do with this hammer here? I can literally run circles and do the side step and step on one foot like this right here. And then sometimes I can even stop it if I haven't had too many cups of coffee. Let me see. That means that my brain is working in the cerebellum, my occipital lobes are working, my dopamine's working, those nucleotide bundles that make dopamine. Does anybody know the name of that nucleotide bundle that makes dopamine? It's called the substantia nigra pars compacta and the substantia nigra pars reticulata. The only time people hear that word is when they are going to the doctor like this. Tomorrow I meet a man who does this. And he has to go in regularly to get his brain scanned because his substantia nigra pars compacta and his substantia nigra pars reticulata are shutting down shop. Now just imagine that you did these exercises. Guess what your substantia nigra pars compacta would be doing? It would have to be making dopamine. Because you're forcing it to make dopamine. This is how it works, guys. Your brain makes acetylcholine. Does anybody know where acetylcholine is manufactured in the brain? It's manufactured in the nucleus bacillus of Maynard. I love it when people take this book here. Now, guys, this book I worked on since I've been in California. Essentially, I've been here for 30 years. I worked on this book for 30 years. It was published 6 years ago. If you can read this book in one time and pass a comprehension test and get 30% of the answers correct, you're really doing well. This book here is chock full of information. Wouldn't you agree, Diego? How about you, Andres?
Yeah, I would agree.
Even after reading it 20 times, you still can't tell me where the suprapyramidal cells are located. Is that correct?
I wouldn't be able to tell you that.
So what happens to us in this quest to maintain the integrity of our brain is we don't go in as a mechanic. So what they did to us with our cars, they made them so complicated that the most adventurous home repair guy can't even fix his own car now. They did it on purpose. Cadillac catalytic converters and the way they have all the system, transmission system and the electronical system, and that you have to be a super genius to figure out how the car works now. So what they did to us with our brain is they said, look, you're just an average Joe Schmo layman. You can't fix your brain. You got to wait for science to fix it for you. So if you're having memory loss, just get over it. It's just part of the aging process. I believe that's to be nonsense. If I said to everybody here tonight, if you can get your grip strength stronger by 10% in 30 days, and I'll give you $1 million cash, tax deferred, you'd all come back with grippers and tennis balls and you get your prize. So if I gave you a memory test, and I said, you didn't do well tonight on the memory test, get your memory 10% stronger in 30 days, and this is what you get. You get a big fat 0. What you get instead is confidence that you're not going to keep on having further memory loss. How many people in this room here are afraid of losing their memory? Everybody should put their hands up. Because Ronald Reagan and Charlton Heston, and we have now, if you go on the internet and plug in Jack Nicholson and his memory problems, it's not pretty, guys. When Rick Perry, the Texas governor, is looking at Mr. Ron Paul saying, Ron, I know I'm not a libertarian, but would you please help me out right now? It's really sad, but it's the truth. And I'm telling you, intelligence cannot protect your brain from going down. If you put your arm in a cast for 30 days, what's going to happen to your arm if there was nothing wrong with it? What would happen to your arm if it was in a cast for 150 days and there was nothing wrong with it? And you were going to give it $100,000 to wear a cast for 150 days. Your arm would never come back to normal. It would never come back to normal. I know because I broke my femur right here when I was 15. I snapped it in two, had 4 operations on the femur. And I worked my butt off and it never came back to as big as my quad muscle on my right leg. And that was in 1974, guys. So basically 40 years ago. I snapped my femur too. And I know that when you have a cast on and you're in traction for 90 days and then re-break it and then break it again, then you got some serious atrophication. And I'm very fortunate that I got my leg to come back so I could even play college football and baseball and hockey and even play professionally in baseball. But I can tell you one thing, if your arm's in a cast, I don't care what you eat, I don't care if you have a keg of water, I don't care if you're on a macrobiotic diet, I don't care if you're a vegan, I don't care if you're eating the latest Hollywood diet, your arm will be atrophied. And your brain is in a cast called the skull. And you can't lift the lid up and look down at its shrinkage in the frontal lobes of the brain. And you know what really happens to the brain, guys? The neurons are the last thing to die. Guess what dies first? The glial cell population. The myelin starts to corrode and atrophy. And that's why you have those problems. You go, I can't believe it. I can't even remember